to today's webinar on strategies to increase school meal application returns. Like Nomi said, my name is Allison Perez, and I am the Child Nutrition Policy Analyst with the Food Research and Action Center. Thank you all so much for joining today's conversation. We know how busy everyone is, and we really appreciate your interest and your participation. We wanted to host this webinar because we know that this year schools across the country may be having more difficulty than normal collecting meal applications from families amid the pandemic. As many of you know, school meal applications are not only important for school districts to gauge eligibility for free and reduced price meals, but also to connect schools and families with key federal funding and a litany of other benefits. Even as many schools are serving free meals to all students through the summer waivers this year, making sure that families fill out school meal applications is still crucial because of these other benefits. As the school year continues on, we know that there is an important opportunity for schools to reach out to families to make sure that they return these meal applications. The goal of this webinar is to provide strategies and resources for successfully increasing school meal application returns, to hear from speakers about their best practices, and to answer any questions you may have about school meal application returns. Next slide. We have a full agenda today with great speakers, so now I'd like to go over the schedule for our webinar. First, I am going to give a brief overview of the importance of school meal applications, and we'll go over some strategies to improve returns. I'm also proud to introduce some new resources on the FRAC website, including a school meal application toolkit that contains templates and best practices for you to use. Next, I'm really excited to hear from a state agency, an anti-hunger advocate, and the school districts about their efforts to increase school meal applications and their best practices. First, we'll have Samantha Brewski, the Training and Communications Specialist at the Washington Office of the Superintendent and Public Instruction, along with her colleague Leanne Exo, Child Nutrition Services Director, who is online to answer questions. Next, we'll hear from Paula Babb, the Community Engagement and Child Nutrition Manager at Hunger Free Colorado. Finally, we'll hear from Ann Mortel, Design and Communication Strategist, and Noelia Oropesa, Engagement Manager at the San Francisco Unified School District. We'll be saving questions for the end, so feel free to use the Q&A function on your screen. Next slide. During the pandemic, many students are attending school remotely, and school districts across the country are serving free meals to all students through the Summer Meals Program, thanks to waiver flexibility extended by USDA for the school year. Because of this, many schools have been having difficulty in collecting school meal applications this year, since many of the ways that applications have been collected in the past are no longer an option. However, the need for school meal applications remains the same, even if the school nutrition programs are not serving free and reduced price meals as they normally would. Next slide. In addition to determining eligibility for free and reduced price school meals, school meal applications are also crucial to helping link schools and families to crucial resources, such as the Title I funding for schools and EBT benefits for children. In order for these benefits to reach schools and families, school districts must continually encourage families to submit applications. Like in years past, families only need one application per family if all children attend the same district, but they must return a new application each year in order for these benefits to reach them and their schools. Next slide. There are many training strategies out there to help schools with collecting school meal applications. Some of these include translating application materials into multiple languages, increasing availability of applications by sending them out with mandatory forms, helping parents navigate the application process through how-to videos, working with trusted members of the community and community organizations, promoting via social media, and many more we look forward to exploring today. Next slide. In addition to these strategies, FRAC is proud to introduce a new toolkit on our website specifically geared towards strategies to increase school meal application returns. In this toolkit, we outline effective outreach strategies and include sample materials school districts can use, including website language, letters or emails to families, social media posts, robocall script languages, and talking points. We also include links to resources from partners and other school districts across the country. You can find the toolkit in the resource library on our website at the link on this slide, and it's also included at the end of the presentation on the resources slide. We also wanted to flag quickly that earlier this month, the U.S. Department of Education issued guidance to assist state and local education agencies that rely on free and reduced price school meal eligibility for other school funding and programs like Title I, acknowledging that data may not be as complete as in other years. This memo gives other data and source options that may be used in place of NSLP source data. We will include this memo and more information in the recording follow-up. At this time, we know that school meal application outreach will look different based on your community and capacity. So I would like to enthusiastically turn it over to our first speaker. Next slide. Samantha Brewski is the Training and Communication Specialist at the Washington Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. Take it away, Samantha.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for the introduction, Allison. So as she mentioned, I am the Training and Communication Services specifically for the Child Nutrition Services at the Washington, the equivalent of the Department of Education. Next slide. So this year, there was several complications that came up, and while in Washington, our districts are locally controlled so they can choose how to promote the meal applications, such as some ways that Allison mentioned through return to school packets and things of that nature. There's generally some issues in returning meal applications that we've heard about, but we've primarily left it up to the local control of the districts. However, as I mentioned, COVID presented some new challenges. Traditionally, free and reduced price meal applications will provide student information so that way they can receive those free or reduced price meals. However, due to operating SFSP, students were receiving meals at no cost. And then at that point, we also didn't know if SFSP was going to be extended into the school year. So, and as well, they weren't attending school in person. In addition to the school operations side of things, Washington relies heavily on the free and reduced price meal data, and we wanted to ensure that future program information, such as area eligibility, would be solid in the coming years. So with all of those challenges presented, we brainstormed how to best support districts since we were under the impression that NSLP would be operating starting in October, and various requirements such as verification would prove difficult. Next slide. So we decided to brainstorm as a team and we're talking about what we needed and how to best help our districts. We came up with the following ideas. We needed a way to ensure that we could share the information with families, how important these forms are, and the different ways it impacts schools. And we also needed to reach families in different ways since we were so virtual. Due to COVID, we were meeting with districts weekly to discuss the changes and updates that we were experiencing, and they heavily influenced the types of documents we needed. Next slide. So from those sessions, we created two toolkits, one focusing on the meal application collection and the other for CEP and Provision 2 districts. Washington State determines funding for our state education programs based on individual student information, so collection of alternate forms for CEP and Provision 2 schools and districts is very important to our funding. The Family Income Survey promotion was equally as important as the meal application promotion in COVID. So we did some research when we were brainstorming, and we found the LA Unified School District. They had a really great toolkit that was more than a meal, and that helped heavily influence what we put out there. Next slide. All of our materials are translated into at least 10 languages, and on the screen you'll see an image of our flyer in both color and in black and white. We wanted to make sure to have various options for districts to assist in printing costs. Next slide. One thing that the district said on our weekly calls was that they needed robocall options. So we created this email and translated it as well. And this email went out to families and doubled as that robocall script. Next slide. And last but not least, we wanted to make sure to promote on social media since that's how a lot of our communications were going out between the districts and the families. Some districts in Washington have a communications managers and others don't. Smaller districts might have the same person who is cooking the meals, managing the kitchen, and also managing communications to families, as well as what's on their website. So with this in mind, we wanted to ensure to have several social media post ideas, so the text that they could use, and that they could use either on their own or with the graphics that we created. And the graphics allow districts to share more information because some social media outlets only have a certain character limit. So they could use this graphic directly on their website, or directly, and it could go to their website and or to the meal applications. Next slide. And then one other thing that was really important to us was that we made certain materials editable. We utilized Canva to allow districts the flexibility in what they shared. So they could use the flyer and the social media graphics from Canva and create their own version of this, so they could do any text, they could change it, and they could change the colors to meet their district needs. So if they wanted to have it their school district colors, they could even update the graphic based on what they thought was important. These documents that were editable included, like I mentioned, the flyer, both in color and black and white, and the social media graphics. Next slide. We then posted all of the documents to a hub on both our meal application and verification information webpage. That's a lot of words, but the meal application webpage, as well as the CEP and Provision 2 webpage. On the right-hand side, you can see all the documents with their different translations. And like I mentioned, we translated everything into at least the top 10 languages. Next slide. So how did we get the word out? One of the main reasons the toolkit was a success was due to our consistent communication with the sponsors in the state. This helped them understand where we were in our process and what to expect without it seeming sudden or unnecessary. Luckily, we were already meeting with those districts weekly and could share out information real time. We let them know that this was coming early on and kept them up to date. After our calls, we would send out follow-up emails with important information, and that's where we linked. Before it was posted to our website, we gave them access to this information early on. After the initial rollout, we put all those links to the website as you saw, and we also communicated it out in our weekly CNS newsletter that we share. Districts, they continue to utilize these documents as needed, and we have noted the use of these forms on their websites as well as on social media platforms. All right, next slide. And I'm not sure, Allison, if we want to take any questions now or wait till the end. I will leave that up to you.
Thanks so much, Samantha. I think for the sake of time, we'll leave questions to the end because I want to get to our next speaker who has to leave early, but I will pass it over to Paula Babb, who currently serves as the Community Engagement and Nutrition Manager at Hungry Free Colorado. Take it away, Paula. I think, give me one.
Am I good to go? Yeah, all right, good, awesome. Thank you so much. Hi everyone, I'm Paula Babb and I'm the Community Engagement Manager, Community Engagement Child Nutrition Manager for a statewide advocacy organization called Hunger Free Colorado. Next slide, please. And today we'll be talking about our toolkit that we developed to promote the free and reduced lunch application or the school meals application. But I'm going to give you a little bit background information. So last year in May, we hosted a Strengthening Food Security in Immigrant Communities Summit, where we really learned from community about what is the best way to promote a lot of child nutrition programs, especially in the era of like public charge. And we just really learned that community members want to learn about resources from other community members through various ways, like the social media, the emails, the text messages, the calls. But it means more when it comes from community itself sharing these benefits. So we decided to, rather than doing campaigns like we have in the past where we do social media, we do these big statewide campaigns, we decided to really focus in communities across the state by empowering community themselves to do the outreach and the promotion of these programs. Next slide. And so our vision for the toolkit was more of like, we knew that like with Pandemic EBT coming and all of the confusion of like, we're doing emergency feeding and then summer meals and then like going back to school meals and filling out an application, but the meals might be free, you know, with COVID and all the waivers and everything moving so quickly and every day was like new information and different. We're like, you know, the community can be really confused about how programs are running. And so what is the best way to message these programs and ensure we're building trust with our communities and they know that they should access these programs, that they have the right to access these programs? So we envisioned to create toolkits that were already designed with all of the materials in advance, and then partner with organizations that serve community members, or in our case, specifically immigrant serving organizations, and partner with them to do the outreach for these programs. We focused on Pandemic EBT, summer meals, school meals, and WIC. And again, we just did all of that brainstorming on what are the good messages based on what feedback we've gotten from community on how we can better support and promote these programs. Next slide, please. So we kind of partnered with organizations with the goal of increasing confidence and reducing anxiety around participation in child nutrition programs with everything going on with a pandemic and all of the waivers and flexibilities. And we were also thinking in advance, once school starts, you know, we rely heavily on school meal applications for kind of like Samantha had mentioned, right, for just the funding and for program eligibility and for a lot of things. And so we do what's called the October count. So in October, they count all of the applications that have been submitted, and that really determines whether schools are eligible for that Title I funding, or if they're eligible to run a summer meals program or an after-school at-risk program. So we're thinking in advance, what information will community need, and how can we present it to them in a way that builds trust and ensures that they access this? And also thinking about Pandemic EBT in the future and how that might work, and how the school meals application feeds into that. So we basically partnered with a lot of partners across the 17 community organizations across the state, and we created outreach plans with them. And we also funded them to do outreach. And then their main goal was to do outreach and spread the word, and to participate in trainings, webinars, check-ins, and promote the programs using the toolkits that we created for them. Next slide, please. So we did our messaging based on a campaign that we had worked on in the past. And my predecessor did a lot of research on other states, what had they done and everything. And we also settled with the more than a meal kind of slogan on kind of like, it's more than a meal, so apply to support your school. And we just also wanted to ensure that our communities understood, what does that mean? What does it mean when we apply for school meals? It really means there's a lot of benefits for both the student and for the school. And it's really important to apply because, you know, you're benefiting your community, you're benefiting your school. So we decided to just take that message and run with it. So we created a digital toolkit that we put just in Google Drive in a way for everyone to be able to access. And that toolkit was kind of on our website. And next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. And in this, so we created our materials we partnered with a statewide organization called the Blueprint to End Hunger, and we partnered with the Colorado Department of Education. And we did our toolkit kind of like twofold. One was meant for community organizations, and one was meant specifically for our the school district. So everything in the school district's toolkit was editable, so they can plug in their information. We don't have a state meal application, so all the schools do it very differently. So that's why we created a whole bunch of editable materials so the school districts could edit and pick and choose what they wanted to use. And then with community, we did more of the basic messaging and like the general, like contact your school to know where you could apply. So that's why we did kind of two different toolkits. One was specifically for the district to do the messaging, and one was specifically for community members to do outreach to community members, or for community organizations to message it to community members. And we did we primarily focused in just Spanish and English because we knew that just with public charge, there was just so much fear in our Spanish-speaking immigrant communities. So we primarily just focused on the English and Spanish, but with our toolkits, we did a whole like, start here, how do I use it? What all is included, and how can I use that and modify it? Next slide, please. So the materials in our toolkit included flyers. We had the basic flyer that, you know, had the messaging. What are the benefits for the students? What are the benefits for the schools? We had a step-by-step guide on how do I fill out the application. We really learned from community that schools in Colorado, they'll give out the application, but sometimes there's not someone to necessarily walk the families through. So we decided to do a step-by-step guide on how to fill out the application. We did templates for emails and newsletters, for robocalls, or if someone was going to do calls to people within their programs and talk about them, we did a whole phone script on how do you message school meals. We did text messaging templates. We did a whole social media messaging toolkit within the toolkit that had, the different messaging, different pictures that you can use, a video explaining the program. We also felt it beneficiary to create a PowerPoint, because if we're having a community organization present to their entire community, they already have the PowerPoint to know how to talk about the program. We also did frequently asked questions. And one thing that was also important that I forgot to include in the slide, we also did a talking point. How do we talk about this program when we're just having a general conversation with our community member? And also to ensure that all of these community organizations we were partnering with were talking about the program in a similar way. So we wanted to keep everything consistent. And we also held weekly check-ins with all of our partners to see, what questions are the community asking you? What's the confusion? What's going on? And but we did hear that this toolkit really just helped kind of ease that confusion that was going on. Well, why do I fill out this application when I'm getting free meals in the school? The community members were really able to drive home the point of it's more than just that meal. And yes, you can still access the free meals that your school is offering right now, and you should access them, but this is why you should still fill out your free and reduced lunch application. And we talked about PEBT and the Title I funding and all of the great benefits of it. And the neat thing about our toolkit and everything was that we were empowering community to spearhead that outreach and that sharing of information. Which we think is really beneficial. We've learned from experience to really teach your community, right, about these programs that exist that are beneficial and give them the tools to be able to spread the word. So ours was really focused on community, but we did it in partnership with Colorado Department of Education, and also kept that district component, so they can share the messaging for their communities and their families. And sorry, I did speak a lot, really quick. But feel free to ask any questions and things like that. But yep, thank you guys.
Thanks so much, Paula. And real quick, before you hop off, we've got a question for you specifically. How did you coordinate with the State Department of Education and with the state SNAP agency? Did they assign someone to work with you to get info for your planning and materials?
So for Pandemic EBT, we have a really great relationship with both departments that we work on a regular basis. And so with the Colorado Department of Education, I work with them throughout the year for how do we do better outreach for a lot of these programs. So they did help out with a lot of this messaging, and they helped with promoting the messaging and things. And then with our SNAP agencies, well, our organization does a lot of SNAP enrollment through a hotline that we have. So a lot of it we would be referring to our families also through that meal application to our own hotline. And again, we have a really great relationship with both the state agencies, so they can help us spread the word for things. I hope that answered the question.
Awesome, thank you. And then one more real quick. Was your funding from donations, foundations, state agency, or another source?
Yeah, all of them. So yeah, we're funded through donations and foundations. For this work specifically, we don't have any state funds necessarily for this. And we also pulled from our operational budget to fund organizations to do this work, because oftentimes my work in community, I'm an immigrant myself, a lot of community members do the work for free. And, oftentimes the people we're asking to do this work are going hungry themselves. So we just made it a priority to prioritize also compensating community members for a lot of this work. So we funded organizations from just our operational funds. We funded organizations to help us do this work.
Awesome, thank you, Paula. For the sake of time, we're gonna kick it off to our next speaker. So last but certainly not least, we have Anne Mortel, who's the Design and Communication Strategist at the San Francisco Unified School District, and Noelia Oropesa, who's the Engagement Manager at San Francisco Unified School District. Take it away, ladies.
Thanks, Allison, and hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Mortel, and I provide design and communication support for our Student Nutrition Services Department at San Francisco Unified. Noe, are you on?
Noe, I'm going to unmute you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Noelia Oropesa. I'm having some technical difficulties over here with this high wind. And I'm the engagement manager for student nutrition. We hope today's webinar and our strategies will help you increase your school meal application return for your district. Next slide, please. Oh, no. Okay, I guess, yes. At SFU,
we can go back one. There we go.
Thank you. At SFUSD, we have one form, and it's called the Multi-Purpose Family Income Form. This form is also known as the meal form, and we use it to collect student meal eligibility and offer our family the benefits of the school meal eligibility, and offer our school's local control formula funding. We encourage all families to submit the form at the beginning of every school year, and we emphasize that it's an annual process. All families are asked to complete one form per household, even if they have two students attending different schools. All we need is one form. We use School Cafe as an online platform for our families, and we are a diverse multilingual district, and we offer the form in 7 languages. Next slide, please.
So there are 3 key elements of our meal application communications. Having a user-friendly website and form, providing phone and email support, and then not only communicating with families, but also school staff and community partners as well about the importance of the meal application. Next slide. So ensuring that your website is user-friendly can go a long way in increasing meal application returns. We created a short link to our webpage so it's easy to share. Ensuring that your form is mobile-friendly is also important, as many families will use a smartphone to apply. As Noe said, providing the website and form in multiple languages relevant to your district will ensure all families can access the application. And lastly, providing simple and clear instructions using bullet points and short content will make the process easier for families. Next slide. Noe, are you on?
Noe, I'm going to unmute you again.
Sorry, guys. Yes, we provided a special email address, for parents to reach us and our Department of Student Nutrition Services. So for parents to be able to call us or email us, we found that schoollunch@sfusd.edu was an easy way to remember the email address. We created a multilingual support team, and our support team was actually made out of many of our dining staff who helped call parents, email parents, and even help us process applications. We created a list of frequently asked questions for staff to use when responding to phone calls and emails. This helped with consistency and efficiency throughout our department. We used the Google Docs, kind of like Paola did, for staff to copy and paste and respond quickly. As a team, we discussed patterns that arise, and we added it to our FAQs. We adapted our website and addressed issues right away. Next slide.
So when communicating with families, it's important to always clarify that the school meals program does not apply to the public charge rule. And free and reduced price school meals are available regardless of citizenship status. We were also able to offer a contact at our district's Refugee and Immigrant Support Department for families to contact directly with questions. And then while we talked about today that school meals are free for all students during the pandemic, highlighting the additional benefits of the form is important. So some benefits we highlighted were, providing essential funding for your school, becoming eligible for a Pandemic EBT, enrollment in after-school programs and SAT fee waivers. And then in San Francisco, we're also able to offer that families can receive discounted utilities and internet access, which is a great benefit. We also included multilingual flyers in our grab-and-go meal bags. Our district distributes about 200,000 meals each week, and this is a great way to reach families that aren't online as much and may not be receiving your digital communications to ensure that they are still getting the same information. We also posted on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook in multiple languages and sent a mass text message to families with our website short link so that they can click that directly from their smartphone to apply. Next slide. To communicate with school staff, we created a social media toolkit for schools to promote to families from their social media accounts. We also included weekly reminders of key deadlines in our district's email newsletter to staff. We sent a memo to principals outlining the importance of the meal application for families and for their school, and focused on schools that had new administrators. We also shared a list of the submission rates by school to encourage each school to reach 100% submission rate. Next slide.
Yes, and we also communicated with our community partners. We made a lot of new friends with city organizations like San Francisco Family Support Network, YMCAs, and with many family resource centers that support our students and our parents. We provided clarity about the public charge, explained that the meal form means more than just school meals, and that the meal form results letter could help apply for various fee waivers in support of our students' academic success and their household. Here in the picture, you see my colleague Tesla Avellan from Student Nutrition Services and Maria Rocha from Mission Graduates at a live Facebook presentation where the audience was able to ask questions and receive answers right there and then. Yeah, it was a good one. And we also distributed multilingual flyers to commonly used parent resource centers. And now, would you guys like to see our results? Next slide. Yes, I'm happy to report, and with much gratitude to everyone that supported our families in San Francisco Unified School District, K-12, free and reduced percentages as of December 30th was 49.2, which was not that much different from last school year. I believe we did so well because of the authentic partnerships we made with our parents, community partners, and district staff. Next slide, please. We invite you to join us on any of these communication platforms. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Next slide. I hope this presentation gave you new strategies or ideas to support our parents and our schools. Please feel free to share your ideas with us. If you have any questions, here's how to reach us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is such an amazing presentation, and thank you so much to all of our speakers. And at this time, we're going to throw it over to our audience for questions. And to get us started, I actually have a question for our audience if they want to answer it in the chat function, which is, what strategies have you been using in your work to increase school meal applications this year? But with that, I will also turn some questions over to our speakers. And so our first question is for Samantha. And how are states measuring the success of their toolkits at the sponsor level and also at the household level?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you for that. At this point, we take feedback from districts and see if we need anything else, but we don't have an official feedback collection tool. We leave that up to the districts themselves to measure the success of their outreach.
Awesome, thank you. Our next question is for Noelia and Anne, and it is, does the San Francisco USD basically have a combined application? Is this allowable if the district is not operating any provisional programs?
Noelia, would you like to take that?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Can you say that one more time?
Absolutely. So the question is, does the San Francisco USD have a combined application, and is this allowable if the district is not operating any provisional programs?
Yes, it's allowable because it's a multi-purpose family income form, and I think we started this like 3 years ago, and we had to go to the California Department of Education to have this approved. I don't remember exactly the important points to point out here to guide anyone, but I know that this was when it started the CEP program, and we had to use the LCFL survey and a meal application, which was very difficult for our families to do both. And so we got the support from our district leadership and our child nutrition consultants to make this happen for us, for our district. I hope I answered the question.
Awesome. And another question for you guys. For San Francisco, how did you work with your state education department and with the state SNAP agency for PEBT? Did they find someone to work with you or your district or other districts?
For some reason, my connection is really not that well.
Oh, that's okay. I can answer this one. For Pandemic EBT, we partnered with our city's Human Services Agency to promote PEBT. You know, in the state of California, there is it's a big state with a lot of students that are eligible for PEBT. So our state has sort of broken up the way that you know, we can support each area of the state. Does that help?
Yes, excellent. Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so our next question is for all of our panelists. And can you say how the number of applications with COVID relates to, okay, so the number of applications during COVID relates to pre-COVID. And are you catching more families or losing families? Do you have any idea what aspects of your programs bring in most dropouts?
I'll chime in here that, you know, well, we definitely saw a decrease in the number of applications we collected this year. I think that, you know, obviously the lack of in-person instruction that we have in San Francisco contributes to that, and that we're not reaching parents in the school building. In addition, we didn't use any paper forms this year, and we're normally able to provide technical support on site in our office, at school buildings, and, you know, with a paper form. So those were definitely some reasons why we collected less applications this year. We were able to alter our online platform to allow school staff to help families apply, rather than the online profile being specific to, you know, a parent. So that was one other strategy that we used to increase digital applications.
Excellent.
And I'll chime in. While, like I said, we don't have any official way to collect that as a state, a lot of our districts did use the paper application, as I mentioned in the presentation, and they did it in like back to school handout packets and stuff like that. So one of the things that we really focused on were the alternate ways to communicate, and we found that that was helpful for a lot of different districts with the social media and the email contacts and stuff like that.
Thanks, guys. Well, I think looking for if anybody else, any other audience members have any more questions, please feel free to put them into the Q&A box. But in the meantime, I was wondering if you guys could say if there's one method in particular that you've seen as incredibly effective to reach families right now amidst COVID. Could you give an example?
Should I go ahead?
This is Noe. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Oh, great. So I want to emphasize on how we focused on schools where there was new administration. We had new secretaries, new principals, and, you know, they have a lot to learn and get familiar with their families at their school. They really appreciated how we helped them, gave them one-on-one basics about the meal application and the benefits and how we can achieve to collect a good number of the forms for their families and how the benefits the families can get. So yeah, for me, that really stood out this year.
Yeah. I was also going to say that, you know, I think social media can be a powerful tool right now because with all of the demands on parents and families, meeting people where they are, you know, we know people are already on social media and spending time there. So, you know, getting in front of them in that way could be a really effective way.
I would echo what Anne said. We saw an increase in the promotion, just seeing our flyers and stuff being posted on social media outlets. There was a big, I definitely noticed a lot of that this year. So I think that was very beneficial to meet the parents where they were at and where they were obtaining the information.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, everyone. It looks like we don't have any more questions in the Q&A box, so I'm going to let people have another couple of minutes to enter in any last-minute burning questions. But in the meantime, I can talk about some of our resources that we have on the next slide. So as I said earlier, we have on our website, we've updated the strategies to increase school meal application returns toolkit. And we've also included on this slide toolkits from each of our partners who are speaking on the webinar today. And for any future webinars that we host, you can sign up for those at frac.org/events. And it looks like we have one more question coming in. And it looks like the question is, incomplete, so we're just going to follow up with that person. So in the meantime, it's time for us to go ahead and wrap up today's webinar. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and a special thank you to Samantha, Leanne, Paula, Anne, and Noelia for joining us and sharing your expertise. The recording resources mentioned will be shared in a follow-up email, and in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.